Hi everyone. I'm beaming this broadcast out to you from the spectacular Turkish coastline, sailing along the Mediterranean. This ancient setting is actually remarkably apropos for the ancient, well, in fact, primordial, really, topic I would like to broach here now. That being the core operations of life and health. That which you truly need to know in order not only to self-heal or help others heal, but to tap potential within your makeup that is far vaster than you may be aware of. Please let me first say that what I share here is done with an enormous amount of reverence from whence this knowledge comes. This is not my knowledge, but knowledge that comes from the fabric of life, and I only came across it under what I have no problem calling life or death circumstances, because that's what it felt like to me. I wanted to die, and I was getting pretty desperate before I found it. And I'm not exaggerating. Some of you know my story, but most of you probably don't. I had a really big problem with what was presented to me as life. I won't go into it all here, but I will just say that all the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual symptoms that went with it made me want to leave this world, like, completely. Until, by some enormous blessing that I give thanks for every day, a miracle that I can only chalk up to destiny, because I really was suffering inside that much, brought a steady stream of interconnected knowledge my way that captured my attention because I could feel its ring of truth on every level. And then it quickly began to prove itself to me in short order. After only a few weeks, I was lifted out of my acute despair, and from there, the months and years that followed brought ever more fruitful evidence. The knowledge further unfolded and evolved over time, over the last 16 years, which leads us to present and why I am so passionate about sharing it all with you, with anyone in need, having no vested interest or agenda other than to help. I've had my career. It's been great, and truthfully, if it weren't for the fact that this information needs to continue to be disseminated and cared for, I would and could just lie in the sun and enjoy my family at this stage. But the work is not done until it is done, I guess, and truthfully, I get a lot of pleasure myself out of seeing people dropping their pain and struggles. Freedom to feel wonderful and live the ecstatic, inspired life is, to me anyway, the very best gift that can be given, and almost as lovely to give as to receive. I am not nearly so arrogant as to think I've got it all figured out. But what I will say is just that I have enough figured out that I can apply and help you apply this original primordial knowledge well enough to get you to tap that much vaster potential that is truly in your reach, closer than you might think. To quote Albert Einstein, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. I am more of a wide-eyed, enthusiastic student than a teacher. Though I do believe that when you find something that will benefit others, it's important to share it, especially with those who are hot-wired for it. In that spirit, I'm also going to be very direct and try not to overly editorialize information that is best absorbed with a clean, direct delivery, which may at times come off a bit blunt. For example, we have to start by acknowledging the elephant in the room, which is, why in the world do we have such fourth-rate information to begin with? You know this. To say that the health category, and yes, that goes for both the natural health industry and the medical health industry, is rife with bad information, I mean really seriously warped, commercial agenda-driven information, trends, half-truths, and theories which are entirely separate to and absent of the precepts of the fundamental laws of life, is putting it mildly. I realize I'm making a sweeping generalization, but as we get to the meat of our discussion, you'll understand why this is a fair accounting and why it actually needs to be stated from the get-go so that we can share a common context. Of course, just because you listen doesn't mean you have to accept anything I present. In fact, blind following is the enemy of truth. But I need to state this as part of my vantage point up front so that we may share a common context here, and so you know where I'm coming from. The information currently circulating in the so-called health category is corrupt and harmful beyond measure. Now, that is not merely a subjective statement. It is, objectively speaking, a reality. Meantime, these commercially driven agendas and the harmful information in their wake are rampant and ruining people's precious lives. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that it's actually a full frontal injustice to our humanity, to our life experience, and access to our self-knowledge. Hippocrates emphasized the adage, first and foremost, know thyself. How can we, when we're cut off from day one from that which will enable us to know ourselves and support that which is true about ourselves? Moving on. I've been inundated with questions lately which on the surface appear to be a wide mix of a variety of questions, but are actually the same question dressed up as different symptoms and concerns. As this is the case, they can in fact all be responded to with one great, wide, comprehensive brushstroke. Whether you're a health seeker or you want to be a really great healing catalyst for others, obviously you need the best, purest information. I like to call this best, purest information original primordial health knowledge. I'll define primordial health knowledge as that basis of understanding which can be held to the deepest scrutiny of the laws of life, because they are intrinsic to the law of life and proved when applied in the field, as in on yourself or on a client or friend or someone you're applying them to, by actual, visible, visceral, and experiential evidence, meaning you see and feel a beneficial result as a direct response to the application of this knowledge. You're not left wondering if it is working, like some theoretical or hypothetical concept, a vitamin or a hormone or other modality that works according to someone or something. You simply and undoubtedly know it is working because you see and feel the results in real time for yourself. Primordial health information, when applied, is unquestionably self-evident. The theories and the hypothetical abound, but I have not seen the primordial health knowledge circulating anywhere except perhaps in the most obscure places. Again, that is a gross injustice to our humanity. Why is it not in the possession of every 5-year-old child? People don't know why their health is failing them, and even if they think they do, and when they think they may have a lead, they tend to apply concepts and substances that should help, again, theoretically, but they don't really in any lasting, meaningful way. So round and round, everyone goes in their isolated lives, getting bits and pieces from people, counselors, well-intentioned friends who have bits and pieces, but overwhelmingly, too many are suffering badly, most are suffering moderately, and a lucky few only suffer mildly, while none, or maybe one or two, suffer not at all. That is just unacceptable and totally and completely unnecessary. The fact that we are operating without original, pure knowledge, simple knowledge, in fact, that pretty much anyone can grasp, is so wrong it hurts to consider it for long. And I don't want to spend too much energy either on speculating as to why this is, because it delays us setting it right. But let's just say that primordial health knowledge would not be a favorite among the charlatans in the so-called natural health and medical industry. It would make them obsolete. So right here and now, it's time to set things right, to bring the primordial health information through without a filter. Typically, my filter is a group of private students. It's sharing it with those who are on a quest for truth and have already extricated themselves largely from life-destructive paradigms because their antenna picked up the malodorous scent of rotten information at some earlier point. But for so many good reasons, I just don't think now is a time to hold back anything that could result in joining life-generating information with individuals who are either consciously or unconsciously seeking life-generating knowledge, period. No one should have to go without the primordial health knowledge whilst genuinely endeavoring to self-heal or heal others. Finally, because many of the questions I've received, at least recently, have to do with the conflicting information circulating around the topics of alkalinity, detoxification, and alkalinizing water systems, this information will also speak to all of that. As it turns out, these topics are all interconnected and related to the primordial health knowledge. All in, I think you'll find it to be pretty empowering stuff. And also, I underscore simple. Simple in concept, but because our world is so far removed from the simple truth, getting back on the life-generating trajectory can be an overwhelming maneuver. A little daunting and complicated because you'll be jumping tracks. However, if you can commit to the track jumping and expect the stretch required, you'll soon be on the right track in a stately cabin. Just try to keep front of mind that it's not because the pure truth, the primordial health knowledge, is complicated. Rather, it's because the widely accepted ideologies with the customs and norms that emerge from them are inverted and convoluted. And getting people to see that is an added issue. To quote Mark Twain, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. With all that established, let's dive, as promised, into the primordial health knowledge. The first thing you need to know is that the essence of life is conductivity of life force. Conductivity cuts through all the confusion. Hear this now. If you grasp the conductivity of life force is life, and therefore the prerequisite of all health knowledge, you will be able to hold every single possible health theory and application against this and know how to interpret its worth. So that single point, that the essence of life is conductivity of life force, in and of itself can take you from here to eternity pretty much all on its own. But let's continue, because next we must fully understand the importance of conductivity and what specifically it is that we're wanting to see conducted. What is this life force? Conductivity of life force happens on a subatomic level because life force comes from the subatomic particle that is the electron of the atom pulsating with the magnetic energy of the pull from the nucleus of the atom. This creates spin, and spin is velocity, and velocity sends the electromagnetic current surging through the organism. And that, my friends, is conductivity. When the electrons conduct their current from one atom to the next, you have conductivity, free flow of energy, the power of the universe surging through your body, and the extent to which you have that operating within you is the extent to which you will evolve your being and not only merely overcome all illness, but move far beyond the merely asymptomatic, meaning symptom-free state, to states that we are destined for, coded within our DNA, that are beyond our wildest imaginings. I know this because I am experiencing it. Again, it's not theoretical, it is experiential. Anyone who is game for the bigger ride, the ride that pushes the envelope, like I do regardless of what other people around me are doing, and those who will not be influenced by the accepted limitations of the human collective can do this too. But first, the prerequisite and constant companion on this journey when you get beyond the tissue cleansing stage must be established. It is the enhancing of the conductivity of life force. This means removing, dissolving, and eradicating anything and everything that stands in the way of conductivity of our spinning electrons. Let me now explain spinning electrons. When we have more protons in the nucleus than electrons on the outer belt of the atom, we have a situation of positive ionic charge. This is not a good thing. It is an imbalance where the protons snuff out electrons they find in nearby healthy atoms, disabling them, destabilizing the conductivity of the potential conductivity of that electron. What this does is something fairly sinister. The healthy atoms spin centripetally, which is the life-generating spin of conservation of energy. It's cooling. Whereas these positively ionically charged atoms spin centrifugally in an explosive wasting of energy. They destabilize the healthy centripetal spin that is needed for conductivity, and the whole healthy system despirals. So negatively ionically charged atoms are centripetally spinning and life-generating, encouraging and driving conductivity of life force. And in diametrical opposition, positively ionically charged atoms threaten that life-generating propulsion both by snuffing out the electrons as they rob them from the healthy negatively ionically charged atoms, and then they detune the healthy spin with their destructive, like deteriorating spin. So basically, it's all about spin and conductivity. We have to protect and support centripetal force and flow. Now, the power of the spin of the atom determines the voltage of that atom. So, a strong, negatively ionically charged, healthy, life-generating, richly replete electron belt around the atom is going to have a high voltage. The voltage is the measurement of chi, life force. Often, this is also categorized as alkaline, but I want us to be careful with the terms alkaline and acidic here because they have been misinterpreted and misunderstood outside the context of spin. We'll get to that in a bit. But life-generating voltage, lots of electrons spinning those atoms centripetally, is what the body needs to be vital, to heal, to radiate, and to evolve. All healing and evolution happens at this subatomic level. To put it another way, all healing and evolution happens when the surrounding conditions are centripetal. Centripetal force is the force you want with you. You don't just want any force, you want centripetal force. So you see, conductivity of life force originates in the subatomics in atoms with ample electrons, which create a centripetal spin. And then, as the centripetal force moves through the body at large, it becomes a macro event, meaning the flow in the cells, tissues, organs, systems, and fluids reflect that centripetal force from the electrons in the atoms in the subatomics. Ultimately, what you want and what you can expect if you line your approach up properly is a scenario where you have all systems at all levels operating with centripetal force, physical, in the fluids and foods, and in the mental, emotional engagements, because these must also support the flow of chi. I can't overstate it. Centripetal conductivity is the name of the game. I think there's some action going on in these boats around me. Okay. Now let's look at the alternative. Where conductivity is blocked on both or either the subatomic and or the macro expressions, meaning the cells, tissues, organs, pathways, fluids, systems, the naked eye stuff versus the infinitesimally small atomic size stuff, or atom size stuff, you'll have deterioration result. So let me say that a little bit more clearly for you. Where conductivity is blocked, either on the subatomics or the micro expressions, deterioration results. We don't want conductivity blocked because deterioration results. Okay, I put that 3 ways. Hopefully one of those ways comes through. When centripetal spin and conductivity are blocked, the decay cycle sets in, starting with the literal turn of events. Centripetal spin turns to centrifugal spin, where in between there is this momentary stagnation. In the centrifugal spin now, is where the pathogens develop. The pathogens are the decomposers of life, and therefore the guest list of the decay cycle. When electrons cannot conduct their negative ionic charge because they're being snuffed out by an onslaught of positively ionically charged atoms, also centrifugally speaking, they're unhinging the healthy centripetal atoms. Or because there's blockage in the intestine and the joints, there's sticky blood, there's too much mucus, etc. What happens is that the life-generating spin goes into anti-spin. And there is where the pathogens start to develop. The pathogens proliferate and begin decomposing the matter, or in the case of energy, invisible pathogens, which are energetic in nature, which are energetic in nature, they start to destroy the unseen energetic blueprint. Okay, so just as your physical matter can despiral, so can the substance of your mind and your heart. Your emotions can go rogue. Your mental state can be defiled. Your spirit can be repossessed, as it were, by these unseen bugs. It's all a case of energy, proactive energy versus anti-energy. And, most importantly, it's all redeemable. You simply have to rectify the spin. Sorry, I know that word redeemable, redeemer, redemption connotes church stuff, but it's a word that needs to be refreshed, rebirthed, for a new vision of our individual, collective, subatomic, and energetic renewal, because it is the word. The shift from centrifugal, pathogenic decay, to the returning of the centripetal force, which automatically, by the very nature of turning the spin around, makes the pathogens a thing of the past. That's why health is so simple, and yet there is so much to know about how to rectify the spin which can make it seem less simple. But whatever your symptom, it's just a matter of the extent to which your centripetal force has turned centrifugal. And in that, how blockages and pathogens have started overtaking and wrecking your material and energetic matrix. Then, you fix it. Remember, too, that the pathogens are sent in as part of the larger picture of keeping energy free. Once energy starts to get trapped and cannot conduct, this system of decay is actually a way of ultimately freeing it again, because the end of the decay cycle is the actual release of the energy that would otherwise have remained a prisoner of a painful, non-viable prison. Like hell, actually, if you want to think about it that way. That's what it would be like to have your living energy trapped. So the pathogens, they may be icky and cause horrific symptoms, but they are ultimately, in their fullest role, liberators. So we don't hate them, we embrace them with a certain understanding of the good they ultimately bring. Non-viability means trapped life force. The natural way of things will not permit original primal fire, life force, centripetal energy, to ever be trapped. It has designed a way, fail-safe way, albeit an uncomfortable way, to set itself free. Why would the divine make it uncomfortable for itself? That's a good question. My speculation is that it's all about growth. Non-viability and the pain that goes with it reveals what does not work. The lesson is learned in pain. Not to say all lessons need to be learned in pain. Some of them do. Pain is a good teacher. And we don't tend to repeat things for long that hurt us unless we're really blind and stubborn, like when we want to keep trying to make something right that is just wrong. We've all done this in countless ways. But language of life is pleasure good, pain bad. Not short-term pleasure, but ultimate pleasure. So the end result of the whole scenario. For example, stimulating things, the things that give us false fire as opposed to real energy, so the things that may stimulate you, and like coffee and alcohol and grains and sugar, there's an initial sense of pleasure. But ultimately they result in a painful event. Meanwhile, many things that require discipline and don't feel very much like pleasure in the beginning, they don't always result in immediate pleasure. They ultimately do result in pleasure at the end of the scenario and never in pain. The things that bring us closer to life and the bliss of life force, the divine energy and connection, they can require sacrifice, but it always pays off. So therein you have the language of life. Okay, that was a bit of a detour, but I think important. Let's get back to spin. The velocity of centripetal spin is the energetic power of life, the life force. I think you've got this by now. The greater the life force quotient in the atom, the greater the voltage of that atom, the more life force that is contained. So let me restate a little bit there. The greater the life force quotient of the atom, the greater the voltage, the more life force. So it's like this, constant self-energizing process. The more life force contained, the more power that will be evident in the organism, your organism, in terms of vitality, healing potential, creativity, inspiration, and general ecstasy. We're in fact designed for an indefinitely great life force quotient, which would, in our optimally spinning state, make us feel positively ecstatic, look radiant and beautiful, and be unstoppable forces of creativity in all imaginable areas. So indeed, you want to have a strong spin in your subatomics if you want to have a great deal of energy, healing power, creativity, and ecstasy in your being. A being with unobstructed electron-charging spin will hum with unvanquishable life. Another way you can look at the electrons moving through the body, my favorite way, is to imagine conductivity as these electrons kissing life force to one another, kissing and passing on the power of the kiss. The more free flow, the more momentum of the energy builds from all that kissing, and the body's spin intensifies, making it ever more radiant. This is the power of syntropy, the opposite of entropy. Syntropy is more commonly referred to as neg-entropy, but I prefer the positive spin, forgive the pun, of syntropy over neg-entropy. But the takeaway here is that conductivity of high voltage electromagnetic energy, which originates in our subatomics, surging forth from abundant centripetally spinning electrons, is the single most important influencer of everything in our being, not just our physical health, but our mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects as well. So you need always and only ask, what is the state of my atoms, and do I have the conditions in my body for unstoppable conductivity of those spinning electrons with all their power to light up my every cell with that magical, renewing, ever young, and only ever health-delivering energy. If you have this, you will be syntropic, life-generating, to the degree at which this is true. If the electromagnetic energy is not there in your subatomics to a high degree, and/or the conditions are not supportive of unstoppable conductivity, the two naturally either exist together or fail to exist together, then the opposite sets in, the life-deteriorating effect, entropy of the organism, your being. Because at the risk of repeating myself too much, we never just talk about the physical aspect. These subatomics combine to create energy networks which have a body of their own. A body meaning fields upon fields of their own. So the quality of the subatomics and the subatomic energy that makes up the body of the energetic network of your emotions and your mental energetic template are equally critical and an equally real part of you, as much so as your physical aspect. The only difference is that in the physical, you have the energetic template, blueprint, matrix, call it whatever you want, out picturing in form. Okay, you've heard it said that one constant in life is change. What does that mean? And what does it mean particularly vis-a-vis grasping this primordial health knowledge? It simply means that energetic networks are always moving in one of two directions. They are either developing into higher orders, more rarefied expressions, syntropically, or they are becoming more chaotic, falling into lower orders, entropically. Syntropy is the reaching toward higher and higher orders, more and more rarefied expressions of something, your body, your energetic template. Entropy is the opposite. Now, stagnation is a part of the entropic cycle. It's not a standalone, separate dynamic, even though it seems like it might be, even though it seems like it's a stopping point, maybe like a purgatory. Stagnation is the momentary pivot point where the spin goes from centripetal to centrifugal. It's moving away from the life-generating. So, if it's moving away from life-generating, it must, by definition, be part of the deterioration cycle, not a standalone, harmless event. Kind of puts a new slant, some activity here, it kind of puts a new slant on the expression, if you're not with us, you're against us. The second you move anywhere away from the syntropic, you're moving toward the entropic. Even if it feels like a stagnation point, even if it feels like a pivot point, it is on the way to the entropic. Okay, so everything has changed. It's either going to go in the syntropic direction or the entropic direction. There's never an actual stagnation point. It just seems that way, but it's already on the road down. Okay. So, if the energetic fabric is not being improved upon, even by the slightest margin of refining order, it is in the despiraling process. But here's what you need to know. Never ever accept that it cannot be fixed. It just needs its life-generating spin returned. Okay, so of course you're probably thinking, well, I want to be on the syntropic up and up, riding the life-generating spiral with my electromagnetic spin. That's good. That's what I'm hoping you're thinking. And that is indeed the scenario that makes everything thrive and beautifies everything. But in order for conductivity to flow and syntropy to result and beautify, prolong, and bring consistent waves of inspiration to our lives, there are two prerequisites. There must be, number one, minimal to no blockage in the organism. And two, there must not be any, what I call cut threads in the interconnected network of our life system. So places where there's separation, not by blockage, but by a kind of a cutting off. Sort of like we've been cut off from our roots, our literally the roots that our food is grown in, that we're eating out of packages, that we're communicating with distance, that we have all these parts of ourselves that we kind of cut off from that life force network. Okay, so that's what I mean by cut threads. So there shouldn't be any blockage or cut threads in the interconnected network of our life system, either from our subatomics nor among the macro systems or anything in between. The organism needs to flow with unobstructed and uninterrupted life force. That's the simple basic truth, and that's the simple basic underlying factor prerequisite for the conductivity of the centripetal energy, centripetal force. Okay, next, there's a signature to the motion of life-generating energy, in that it's a directional force. There are 4 forces we're working with in the healing arts: centripetal, centrifugal, gravitational, and levitational. We have to understand each of these and their application to our systems if we are to grasp this primordial health knowledge and develop protocols for ourselves and those who seek our counsel. Centripetal, you know now, is the essential signature life-generating force. Centripetal is implosive force, it's cooling, and it's conservation of energy. Centrifugal is the opposite of centripetal, but it's not to be demonized, remember, because like gravity upon levity, the oppositional force pressure is what enables the centripetal force to strengthen, like an athlete strengthens when pushed by heavier weights or more challenging routine. Like I'm being challenged by this boat with its noise. Oh, how about that? You see? In my patients, they turned it down. All right. So let's see here. Where are we? So we've got this athlete strengthening because he's using heavier weights and he's got a more challenging routine. So the centrifugal, like the gravitational, is presenting an opportunity for growth because we want to make sure we're constantly in a centropic event. Okay. So we see this overcoming of centripetal over centrifugal, or centropic over entropic, in the way even our minds develop when we have to push beyond our comfort zones and reach for answers, dissolving problems with solutions. So centrifugal is not bad per se, it's a tool for growth. But centripetal is where the life force is, and when it's compromised in an organism or in an atom, that expression of life starts immediately to despiral into an entropic state, which is the path that experiences pain. Okay, I hope that helps kind of bring all these parts into a larger context. Where there are blockages and cut threads in the network of life, or in your organism to be specific, conductivity of life force is hampered. When it's slowed even a little bit, the potential for entropy steadily increases, like in a death grip, because the conductivity is also slowing. So the more the entropy sets in, the more the entropy sets in. It becomes compounding, becomes exponential. Less life force, more entropy, despiraling of spin, implosionary, centripetal, becomes explosionary, centrifugal, energetically wasteful, creating an even greater loss of life force. Where there is less life force and more entropy, you have proliferating pathogens, the self-same agents of decay and the harbingers of death. More pathogens, more entropy, and therein the woeful tale is told. So when you hear people wax on about alkalinity and water systems and the value or lack of value of detoxification, here's what you need to know. It doesn't matter how much alkalinity there is if the body is blocked. It cannot, will not receive it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, alkalinity and life force, centripetal force, are not always necessarily synonymous. Okay, so alkalinity doesn't necessarily mean life force, centripetal force. You can have something that is alkaline, that has a high pH, that is not centripetally flowing. Okay? Negative ionic charge with electromagnetic voltage. That is what the body can conduct. That is what we want. That is centripetal force. Okay? And pure alkalinity on and of itself, high pH, is not centripetal force necessarily. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. In the case of wheatgrass juice, freshly prepared, it is. In the case of water that has high pH to it that's coming from drops, no, because you can't make centripetal drops out of thin air. That comes from the divine web of life. You see? Okay. So it doesn't mean that we should be having water with negative ionic charge. It just means that it has to come from the network of life. Okay? So, negative ionic charge with electromagnetic voltage in the body can conduct in a body that is unblocked. And that also is not often a given, because a lot of people are coming, those of you even listening to this now, may be saying, yes, that's great, that makes sense, that's so exciting, but you're still blocked. So the prerequisite to all of this knowledge is the removal of the obstruction that's blocking the flow to begin with. We can't just say, let's have flow. We have to remove the blockages first. It has to happen. It's kind of like walking into a room that's filled up with boxes and saying, yeah, flow's a really good thing, feng shui all the way. But what are you going to, you've got all these boxes filling up the room. We move the boxes, and then you can have the force flowing through the room. Okay, so just because something is alkaline on litmus paper is meaningless as an end unto itself. Number 3, voltage is required to operate the body, and it is voltage that is needed to create the essential conductivity. But it is also only voltage combined with conductivity that heals. So the conditions for conductivity must be created by removing blockages and healing the cut threads if the voltage is ever going to get to bring its magic into the cells, the tissues, the organs, the systems, etc. Okay, number 4. Kind of started to explain this, but I want to go into it a little bit deeper. Alkalis, bases, are not the same as life force voltage. People often ask about baking soda as a healing tool, for example. Well, it is and it isn't. Okay? So we know that baking soda is used to snuff out the fungus of cancer tumors, and it is clearly working. But it is only working superficially, meaning when the fungus grows, you can put this baking soda on it, and it will extinguish the fungal fire, like sand on a fire, but the baking soda is not going to get to the core issue. It's not going to create a centripetally meaningful event. So it can only help by snuffing out the superficial aspect, the symptom, not the cause. Okay? So it can help in a superficial way. So by all means, use it, but don't expect it to mobilize your subatomics, which have been destabilized by the sinister influences of centrifugal force. Don't expect it to make things centripetal. Just, it's a healing, it's a tool. Use it while you use everything in your power to up your centripetal force, so the centripetal force can, like a tuning fork, correct the body's spin so that centripetal rules things again. And then you'll see healing happen. Okay, so I have another pet peeve along those lines. Have you ever been told to take alkaline salts to cure your acidic bioterrain, promising that would solve your pathogen-saturated blood problem? Of course you have. And I'm asked about it all the time, so I know. And I know how blood microscopists are constantly beating that drum. They show you the problems with your blood. They show you the markers of the heavy metals and the candida in your blood. And then they give you alkaline salts, promising that will alkalinize your blood so you will no longer have the acidic conditions that are creating the pathogens. Hogwash. People are filled with waste matter that contains old machine oils, radioactive fallout, waste matter from animal flesh, packaged foods, microwave popcorn, like you name it. You just recapitulate everything you've eaten for the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Okay? That's why you're acidic. And that's why you have fungus growing in your blood. Taking salts is a false security blanket. It makes you think you're remediating your biological terrain, but you're not. Nothing could be further from the truth, because that waste in your body is still going to be there tomorrow, and that's what is enabling the pathogens to thrive and your conductivity to be impeded. My grandmother had a saying, to put it sort of euphemistically by a Southern belle, to be full of prunes. Some of you may know that expression. So you will still be full of prunes. You'll just be full of salty prunes. To put it less elegantly, you'll still be full of acidic, accumulated, baked in, caked on waste. Just a salty version. The waste must come out. That's where the healing begins, because that's where the conditions for conductivity and restoration of centripetal spin become possible. I don't know of another way. And, to boot, concentrated salts should only be used minimally. The best form of organic salts, which are not concentrated salts, the organic salts, are the salts in your organic vegetables, which you get the most ample amounts of in the most easily assimilable form. Assimilable. They assimilate well when you drink your green juice. Otherwise, swim in the ocean, take a salt bath, have concentrated salts externally, but don't put more than a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, just to taste, and only if needed, into your mouth. Okay? Anyone who talks about alkalinity as a standalone concept that can be manipulated by using salts and high pH water as an end unto itself without the centripetal and implosionary vortexing that living water has is sorely misguided. These things will not help. They will only mislead further, so that the person will be really even worse down the line. Salts, concentrated salts, will just make you salty. pH is meaningless without centripetal force. However, there are multiple layers to all of this. However, water with acids from the heavy metals, the fluoride, the chlorine, the bromide, the pharmaceutical fallout, all that stuff that's in tap water, water with all of that removed is going to have a higher pH because all that acidity is pulled out of it, and it's that much safer to drink. So it's good drinking water. It may not be, all that truly vortexing centripetal water is, Victor Schauberger water, but it could still be a significantly better option than a lot of other options. So take the Kangen water, for example. Hotly debated, loved by many, discredited by many equally. So I've experienced it, I've used it, I used it for about a month. The Kangen water is not bad. It's way superior to the vast majority of bottled water. It's excreting all the acidic nasties from the tap water. It's throwing off all these acidic horrors. That's really good. Now, it has a higher pH because of it, because it's throwing off this acid, but you're still getting a tap water coming from a filter that is not getting the vortexing effect. Okay, you're not drinking from a babbling mountain. You're not drinking water that is vortexing, that is centripetal. But you're having a way cleaner, pure drinking experience, and that in of itself can help people heal. They're not taking in this other scary water, and they're taking this water in, and they're drinking a lot of water they weren't drinking before. That's going to be a life-generating choice. Ultimately, more life-generating than what they were doing before, so they're naturally going to see results. They're naturally going to get better to the extent to which that's made an impact in their lives. Okay? But it's not, but the Victor Schauberger water, on the other hand, Victor Schauberger, the great forester and inventor, he taught rightly that the vortexing water is the finest water for man. The kind that he would observe flowing down these babbling mountains. And that water is infinitely more life-generating because why? Not because it has a higher pH per se. It may or may not. But because it has mega voltage and centripetal spin from the Earth's energy. And that's what it expresses from. Okay? It's carrying the intelligence of the depths of the Earth and the magnetic charge of the Earth, which it's receiving. And it's in that receiving information and pass that information along to you. Information from the solar system in ways we can't even begin to fathom. Okay? So alkaline drops, alkaline salts, even earth clays like zeolite and bentonite, they have their place. They can be useful, but only in the context of a ton of tissue cleansing support. The release aspect of the awaken release equation, the true cleansing entails. Okay? Our friendly party boat is leaving. Okay. Equally importantly, we need to understand that our bodies are incredibly thirsty. And I'm going to go off on something now that you're probably not going to expect, but it needs to be said. Okay. Our bodies, the universe is blowing its horn on this one. Okay. It's a thirst that cannot be quenched. It cannot be satisfied cellularly by drinking water alone. Drinking water is, in fact, this is a funny place. I mean, we're in Turkey. It was quiet when we arrived, and the family is hiking in this beautiful sort of valley. It's meant to be a very special island, but I think I'm ready to get away from the party boats. Bear with me if you can. Okay. Equally importantly, we need to appreciate, I'm going to go back to this, that our bodies aren't thirsty, and they're not just thirsty for drinking water alone. The drinking of the water is only a very, very basic way of hydrating ourselves. But given where we are now, remember I said that healing is actually very simple, but there's such a huge leap we have to make to change tracks? Well, this is one of them. The scenario that we're in now, with all this baked in, caked in waste in our intestine, means that our intestine needs to drink. Our large intestine needs to drink. And as much as you want to believe that drinking liters and liters of water, gunk, 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 through the mouth, is going to get here and reconstitute all of that and satisfy the thirst, quench the thirst of the tissues of the intestine, as much as you want to believe that, it's just not going to happen. Okay? The average modern person's tissues and intestines are so saturated in waste matter, and the water we drink doesn't begin to reach it. We need to remove the rubbish in the intestine and tissues, and then the water we drink, that we consume by mouth, can reach the intestine. But until that point, this dehydrated, really dying tissue internally, but that's beneath all these layers of waste, needs to be quenched in a different way. We need to drink way, 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 way more through our colon than we attempt to drink by mouth. And then we'll start to know what it means to become hydrated. So everyone talks about dehydration. And you can drink water by mouth till the cows come home, and you're not going to hydrate your colon, where the source of the dehydration is actually originating from. Okay? However, remember I said that it's all visceral and immediate, proof in the pudding, as it were? You will see the difference when the waste in the intestine becomes kinetic because of the water and it moves out. You'll see it immediately. Water makes matter kinetic. That's exciting. Okay? The waste in the intestine, and people say, oh, well, you'll be told, well, the body will remove what it's supposed to remove, and if it's an inorganic substance, it will get rid of it. That's not true, because it has no kinetic energy anymore. It can't remove itself. It doesn't have the power to. So by hydrating it, it becomes kinetic, and then you have the peristalsis, that propulsion, that contraction, that movability in the intestine set in. And then the waste will move out, and the water can be received, and the colon will take big, long drinks, and this repetitive cycle will enable all that waste to move out, and the increase of the peristalsis will take place, and the whole organism will revive from this simple intestinal place. It's very exciting. Okay. So, with regard to hydration, we need to understand that we don't need to drink so much water, but that if we have clean tissues that are not holding tons of dehydrated matter, and we don't eat only dehydrated foods, we will rather, now get this is fun, okay? We will rather eat our water and drink our food. What does that mean? Okay, so you won't see me drinking a lot of water during the day. Water is important, it's very important, but a clean-celled body, and I'm not saying that you're there now and you need to do what I do, not at all, and some people don't even want to get that far, and it's about what you want, not sort of, what I would never project any directive onto you. It's what your soul desires. But know this, a clean-celled body doesn't need much of anything at all. Not much food, not much drink. But what I mean by eating your water and drinking your food is that water-containing plant food is what is real food. It's food that the body can take in, assimilate, and release. It's not going to stick around. It's not going to cause the waste residue. It's it's going to cause all the problems later on. Okay, so drinking your food, that's eating your water. Drinking your food is knowing that there is no higher concentration of nutrition than drinking your vegetable juice. That's your food. Okay, so you eat your water, you drink the food. And it's really that simple. So when we drink green juice, we're literally drinking our food. It's the densest nutrition event in your day. And then you eat your water-containing plant food, whenever you want to, but that's a water-containing food, so you're getting your water that way. I'm not saying don't drink water. I'm just saying you're not going to need as much. You're not going to be thirsty once your tissues are clean and you're eating your water and drinking your food. Okay? So I know, backward, upside down, am I or is the world? I'll leave that up to you. Okay. Anyway, you do this and you won't be really thirsty much at all. You will be hydrating yourself in a much deeper way, and it will come to show. You will feel it viscerally, experientially. You'll know. It won't be hypothetical, theoretical stuff. And this is cool. You will become more kinetic as you become more water rich. Not just the waste becomes more kinetic when the water hits it, but when you actually become more water rich, you will become more kinetic. You'll be more energized. It's okay. You've probably heard that you're 70% water or something. Well, that's true and it isn't true. Children have a very high water content. So when you're a kid and you haven't saturated your intestines yet, you're probably 70% water. Take somebody who's already saturated their intestine and their tissues, and they are getting quite dehydrated. There's no way that you're going to have the same water content in those two people. They're going to have much less. They may have to be 60% water. They might be a little less, a little more. But the point is, you will be kinetic to the extent to which you are water containing. Not because you've drunk so much water, but because you have become the natural balance of fluids, which is, by nature, by your design, highly water containing. Okay? So kids are far more water containing than older people. But older people can espouse a diet of high water content food and do this removal and up their kinetic their water content. And kids, by contrast, can also saturate their cells and tissues and become less water rich. Okay, so I want to share one more extraordinarily exciting insight about water and our bodies, and then I'll bring all this to a close. And that is that we have to understand that there is this reciprocal relationship with water and our bodies. Our bodies will transfigure the water we drink. Just like that babbling mountain is going to make the water within it a vortex, you can put less ideal water into you, and because you are what you are, because you are centripetal, you actually can transform that water. That's kind of awesome. By the same token, you put the centripetal spinning water inside you, and it will help to transform your centrifugal into centripetal. So we are, if we are walking, talking centripetal energy, we'll be able to take less than perfect water and transform it through our spin, elevating it, and be the babbling mountain. Okay? And vortexing centripetal water, not merely alkaline water with a high pH, but centripetal water, which is all about the spin, will be transfigured by that water. Did I explain that right? We will be transfigured by that water. Okay? Isn't that just amazing? Okay, so, if you just look at the power symbols in the world, the ancient obelisks, I never say that right, obelisks, O-B-L-I-S-K, and the pyramids, these actually are chambers of centripetal force, as are all healing shapes and healing chambers. They're actually sigils and chambers that create centripetal force, which is why they are places for regeneration. Yeah, cool, I know. Okay, so let's see, where are we? Basically, a healthy vortexing body doesn't need much water, it doesn't need much of anything. It's super conducting all on its own. And you will realize that experientially when you get to that point where you become a centripetal force to be reckoned with. And you will. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Be very, very centropic, and may the centripetal force be with you. Bye for now.